So in today's film, there's an unseen catastrophic event that creates the circumstances in which a man and his son end up having to take to the road, headed towards some unnamed coast, looking for some kind of way to survive. Viggo Mortensen is the dad. The road is the film. What say you, Rick?
What I love about movies is obviously the entertainment value, but there's also the artistry involved in taking an idea and realizing it through production design, performance, direction, music, in some cases matte paintings, now CGI, that kind of thing, to create this world that we could look towards. There's the artistry, there's the entertainment. And there are a handful of times when I see a film that I can honestly say is great, but that I don't know if it's necessarily a good picture to recommend to people. I look at John Hillcoat's The Road, and I've only seen it twice. Once in a theater when it was first released 15 years ago, 16 years ago. And now last night, in preparation for this episode, images have stayed with me over the decade and a half. The ideas have become more formidable in my psyche. And it's a film that scares me a hell of a lot more than it did 15 years ago. Even though at 15 years ago, I did look at the realities of the possibility of Cormac McCarthy's vision. I know I'm looking at a great film. I know I'm looking at something that comes together beautifully, is nuanced, is honest, and frightening in its realism. I just don't know if it's something that I can't think of a situation where I would recommend this film to anybody outside of the idea of simply recommending a great piece of art. I think too often people watch movies to get away from the world, to get away from the difficulties, the horrors, the trouble of the 40-hour, 60-hour, 80-hour work week, and they don't want to think about the bleakness. This is a film that is nothing but bleakness. There's nothing here as far as I can see. I don't see the fire. I don't see the hope. I don't understand the drive. This is a movie that both scares me and depresses the shit out of me. But I cannot say it's not a great film. I won't say it's not a great film. It is one of the best films of the last decade. I'm interested in the talk that we're going to have over the next hour or so, but I can't imagine that it's going to lead to any place that is any more comforting. This was a difficult watch, and I don't know how anybody can find anything outside of the beauty of artistry. That being said, I'm really interested in your take, because I just, this is about as bleak and hopeless a film as I've ever seen.
It is. I was curious about how you would, if I were to ask you about kind of relating it to The Gray, like how you would take that.
It's weird that The Gray did pop into my head last night as I was watching this, and I think that the main difference is The Gray exists in a world where there is a hope of rescue. There is the slim chance of being able to survive the environment. But this film just depresses the shit out of me, because it's, what are you trying to survive for? What kind of hope is there? Yeah. It's
there are no animals.
There's no animals. I mean, there's a moment when you see a bug, and I'm like, oh my God, there's some hope, but it's just, there's a bleakness. I don't believe in surviving for the sake of surviving. I believe in quality of life. I believe in and maybe that's what a lot of these fucking millennials and assholes will write off as first world problems, but I live in the first world, and I'm not going to deny a certain level of...
Like, I'm not going to fucking, like, not demand my internet.
I don't know. I don't think we should be looking towards... Well, I don't think that we should be living in a world that dismisses comfort. I think that we should be moving towards a world that spreads comfort, that spreads... I hate the fact that you can see footage of children in India digging through fucking, landfills.
Right.
But that we shouldn't be saying, my problems aren't shit. We should be figuring out a way to make their lives better and bring them in closer to something that we have, which is in part acknowledging the gifts and comforts that are available to us. That should always be a goal for everybody. Now, when you watch The Gray, you're looking at survival for the sake of I may be, finding a purpose in life, finding something to live for. There is such a bleakness in this film that I don't know if I wouldn't have taken those last two bullets. This movie wouldn't exist if I were the character. I would have shot my son and I would have shot myself. I mean, I understand it on paper, and there's a dramatic edge to it, and I feel for this character, but it's breaking my soul every fucking second. And by the time, there are sometimes when you're watching a movie and you can think, they're going to work it out, because that's what movies do.
Right.
And a 15-year spoiler alert. Whatever happy ending is supposed, and I haven't read the book, so I don't know if the ending in the book is the same as this. The happy ending that exists here is not a happy ending. It's just a continuation of the misery and the bleakness and the suffering. There's a moment where the apocalypse has begun, and Viggo Mortensen looks out his window and he sees the fires. And most of the movie is contrasted with scenes of a good life with his wife, Charlize Theron, and her gradual, I mean, not even gradual, but rather quick movement towards, she's rational. There's a moment where she says to him, they're going to rape me, and they're going to rape your son, and then they're going to kill us. And there's an honesty to that is not, it's just not approached in films. To tell you the truth, watching this movie, I marvel at the fact that it even got made. I don't know who would say, yeah, let's pump $70-80 million into this project for absolutely no return. Not that things should be determined by box office, but there is a reality to an investment.
Yeah, the studios are not going to say, without the idea of the financial aspect of it, they're not just going to say, let's just create the most depressing film. Just because it's Cormac McCarthy. There's a lot here. I mean, there's, first of all, just the things, there's the aspect on the one end of, it's like hope, the things that give you hope, the people that give you hope, and reducing society and life to its most basic, which is you're just trying to meet your survival needs.
Yeah.
At that point, there is no world order. There is no society. There is no law. It gets reduced at first to family, but quickly as things start to, in those types of like zombie type films, it becomes things are reorganized in terms of like, now you have marauders, you have groups of, you have gangs, you have bandits, and cannibals. And quickly it gets reduced to like Hobbes is like state of nature type of shit, where there is no, it's man against man.
Yeah.
And one of the characters played by Duvall later, that the father and the boy encounter is, he says, whoever made humanity will find no humanity here. It quickly becomes Hobbesian. What did he say, that in the state of nature, life is, I don't remember the order. He says it's like short, brutish, and cruel. That's basically the film, and it's interesting that, so you have a man, a father. You have the mother, played by Charlize Theron. You have the she's pregnant, and then she fucking like gives birth. So this boy is raised in this post-cataclysmic event world. She, the wife and mother, is, you're saying rational, yeah, and at that moment she is, but quickly, like, when she loses her sense of, when she loses that hope, she quickly goes to the other side, which is like, no, we have to die in order to spare ourselves the suffering that we're going to experience before we die anyway. And the father is saying, we have to do whatever we can to survive for as long as possible. And so it's these two like rival. He's like, it's basically he's saying we have to hold on to hope. And she's like, holding on is just more suffering. And the boy can either be seen as like this beacon of hope or this like symbol of hope, something to be hopeful about, or else a liability in some sense. And he plays that part throughout the film. Ultimately, Charlize Theron's character decides to just leave him. She walks out into the cold darkness, no jacket. The father is begging her to stay. And it was crazy because I was sick watching this film. I'm fucking in bed, watching it. And I was like really like affected by a lot of the stuff with the wife. And I also like as a newlywed wedded person, like it wasn't that I was surprised, but I was kind of thrown off at the effect that it had on me in the way that it did, which it's hard to explain because it wasn't like I wasn't surprised in a way that it didn't make sense the way that it was happening. It was just surprised that it came on so strongly. And I think it would also, I guess, surprise me that I would be surprised by it. And so she's gone. And at this point, the boy's already, like, when she decides to do that, the boy's already, like, grown into a boy from an infant. And so, so they've lived like this. And there's a point where the father decides that he has to, in some sense, bury that memory. He has to not necessarily throw it away or get rid of it, but pretend to, or to make a display of doing it. So he's telling the son that they have to stop thinking about the mom, because again, it's like we have to survive. Because when the little boy at one point says he wants to be with his mom, yeah, and that can mean a lot of different things. But the father is like, does that mean you want to be dead? Now, I mean, you can say, well, I want to be with my mom because I want her to be alive. I want to be with my mom because I want to be, let's imagine that she's in heaven, but I just want to be with her. Regardless of whatever that means about my life, I just want to be with her. It could also just mean I want to be dead with her and everyone else who's dead. You know what I mean? Like, but he's like, does that also mean she wanted to be dead because she didn't want to suffer in life? All of that stuff every day. Plus, every day, you wake up wherever you are, and now it's, what are we going to eat? Who are we going to encounter? What are we going to encounter? Well, it has to be a who, because there is no life other than people. What? It could be some kind of like obstacle or whatever that ends up like injuring you, and if you're injured, you're fucked. There are these gangs of people, everyone's looking for food. And if they don't find food and they find other people, well, other people become food. And there you go. So every day is a new fucking, like, am I going to die today or am I going to live? let's just try to get it to the next place and try to get to the coast and see whatever that means. Like, let's hope that on the coast there's something. So in all that, at one point, he decides to throw away he's on a bridge, and he tosses her picture over the side of the bridge. And then he takes off his wedding ring and he puts it on the rail, which it's like a cement rail. Rotates like a foot wide, and he just kind of slides it to the edge. And I was just like, well, that's really crazy because, and I'm telling my wife about it, and I'm like explaining like what happened in that scene. And I'm like, yeah, so he pushed the ring to the edge, and it fucked me up because I'm thinking like, and this is me telling her, but I'm telling you guys, I'm saying when you're not married, the ring represents nothing. Right? This is a fucking ring. When you're married, the ring represents everything. And that's obviously an oversimplification, but it's like your individuality, and hopefully that individuality is maintained throughout your marriage, right? That's the hope. Maintained and encouraged to be maintained. It's intertwined now with another person's individuality, and that ring symbolizes that. Even if you think that marriage is lame and blah blah blah, which like for a long time I also did. Like, I get it. So there's a factor to me that I think that goes beyond all of the societal bullshit of like fucking every kiss begins with K and all whatever bullshit about like get that diamond and whatever, right? Like all of that stuff that we're taught about that goes with being married. But there's the aspect of hope versus liability. When you're with someone in a fucked up situation, it's like they can help you through it, or else like that person can slow you down. That person can help you lift you up, or else they can fucking like, now you're weighing that person down, or they're weighing you down, or whatever. And it's that risk. But at the same time, it's like, well, if you were alone, you wouldn't survive. You cannot survive alone. And so it's interesting that it's kind of like him pushing that ring away was a way for him to let go of the so-called dead weight, so that he could carry the living weight. But at the same time, it's like, that him pushing away that ring is just, on some level, it's for show. For himself. Because he's never going to be able to let that go. And so that got to me. And there's another part where he says, he's telling his son, he's like, when you dream about bad things, it means you're still fighting. You're still alive. It's when you start thinking about the good things, that's when you should start to worry. That kind of got me going because on the one hand, I get it because it's like, well, if you're fantasizing, you're not paying attention to reality, the reality of the situation. Although you can't only deal with the cold, hard facts all the time. You have to so-called look on the bright side, whatever that means.
Yeah.
But it reminded me of this oversimplistic saying that I'm sure you've heard it, but it says hard times create strong men create good times create weak men, and weak men create hard times. Have you heard that?
I've heard that circle. Yeah.
I mean, I completely disagree with that statement. And I don't think that, first of all, I think that people who push that kind of like mentality are, these are the people who idealize dictators, and I think they long for like this warrior glory day type of fucking ethos that where they also would become exploited, because it's it's just like bro fucking tough guy talk, it's like internet fascist shit, you know what I mean, like on Reddit. I don't think that toughness necessarily creates prosperity. The idea of dreaming about the bad times, it means you're still in the fight, you're still doing it, like that. I also think is kind of like another version of him trying to push that ring. What I liked about Viggo Mortensen's character and his performance, and I think it's you don't really see the struggle because it's played out among the characters, because the boy, having grown up in that world, the boy is pretty stunted because of it. He's stunted, and you could say he's naive, and he's like, you could describe him as being like soft, versus being like having been forced to like grow up too fast. He's not like a cynical little boy who's like all fucked up in that way. I think there's a real deep sense of like goodness to the boy. And Viggo Mortensen really, really struggles to prepare him for the day to prepare the boy for the day that the boy is going to have to go on without him, the dad. And he's trying to toughen him up, and he's trying to give him the sense of like, you have to carry the fire. You have to find the good people, but you have to be careful. I'm going to show you how to kill yourself if you need to. But we're not going to be your mom. Like, do it at the moment when you need to. Don't do it before. Pay attention. And the dad, at some point, their stuff is stolen, and the dad exacts justice, what he believes is justice. So he's like, I'm going to take all this guy's fucking clothes, and I'm going to leave him. Because he has to understand, I'm not going to kill him, but he has to understand that, like, they're without law, there's no law, but there are still consequences. And he's trying to create this sense of, like, order in this world, and to demonstrate certain things for the boy and for himself. And so it's this constant struggle. And Viggo Mortensen, I think, I don't think I'm going to watch the whole movie again, but I want to go back and look at clips to see, I want to really like see that performance. Even though I think the performance itself is masked, again, like how I said, it's, I think Viggo Mortensen comes off mostly as that pragmatic type of person, because he's bouncing off the boy's idealism or naivete or however you want to describe it. But I think Viggo Mortensen also has that. And Viggo Mortensen is also like, has a softness to him that he himself has had to like throw away. He begs, he's like, please spend one more night with me to his wife. And she's just like, no. And it's like so fucked up. The vulnerability of that. We cannot convince her because she's gone at that point. And I think The Grey has a film like The Grey has a little bit more of a kind of like a horror element to it where it's just like, all right, who's going to get picked off next and who's going to, like a slasher, like who's going to get picked off next and who and how. Except there's no like, the camp counselor who bears her breasts first dies, you know, or the black guy dies first, or however. This is The Grey is different in that sense, but there's also like a certain macho quality to The Grey that this doesn't have.
No, but they are in keeping with each other through the sense of survival and retaining humanity. John Otway is struggling with that. The Grey is about a suicidal man who discovers the will to want to continue living, and maybe it's a matter of survival is an instinct within all of us to push further and go as far as we can and protect who we are. And with this character, you could argue with the father, the man, as he's written, Viggo Mortensen's character. You could say he loves his son so much that he's willing to protect him at any cost, and and suicide is a last option. It is a means to stop the suffering, but only after every option has been exhausted. But it is the struggle to retain humanity, because you're not just fighting for survival. You're fighting for a reason to live, and I think both films really embrace that as finding there's something fundamental about us. Maybe it's our fear of death and the unknown, or it's just a matter of wanting to go out on our own terms, or however, whatever cliche you want to say it is. I think the beauty of both films is that they're natural, and you can empathize with the characters. You can understand what's driving them. You can understand, like regardless of how I feel about my realistic impression of not being able to, I would not have survived this world. I know that. I'm pretty sure of that, I can say. There is an empathy that you can find in the written image where you can say, yeah, I can see why he's doing this. I can see there's a part of me that wants to live, that wants to hold on to some degree of hope and an idea that we're going to come out on the other end of this thing. At least you're looking for the good place. You're looking to get out of Thunderdome. You're imagining that if I exist and if I believe I'm a good person, perhaps there are others out there like me I think it's the thing that keeps the system going. For as cynical and pessimistic as we may sound, there is an idea of, I have known good people in this world. I think that situations kill that, but there is hope that I might be able to find it. It's that keeping that ember alive, carrying that fire that he talks about in the movie. There's a part of me that finds it very naive and childish to a degree. But if I were wandering the lands, that would have to be the thing that kept me going. If I were going to keep going, if I were going to keep pushing through, and if I had a son that I wanted to protect in that way. Both of these films, you can go into the films and just look for the action, the adventure. You can watch this film and think it's going to be, oh, this is a Walking Dead film, or not a Romero film. I'm talking about the Walking Dead series, because I could see how they would have marketed it like that. I could see how it would have looked like that, when in fact it's a far more human. And this is about as honest as I could imagine the end of the world looking like. I'm not sure that I take issue with anything that happens in this movie as far as being unrealistic. Except for maybe the ending. I don't,
so,
yeah.
Going to that.
I don't see a movie, I don't see a story like this. I don't even know if it's a happy ending, that the kid watches his father dies, grows up to a degree in that experience, and then is, I can't even say saved, only prolonged by his encounter with a family that has been following them to some degree. Guy Pearce and Molly Parker and their 2 children, and they're going to take another kid in. And is it simply, I need to read Cormac McCarthy's book. I want to know if it ends the same way. I've never read The Road. I don't know. And don't tell me, because I don't want to know until I read the book.
No, I said that groomer.
What's up?
I haven't read the book either. You said Cormac McCarthy, and I said that groomer.
Yeah.
I don't know if you're familiar with this subplot to our episode.
Yeah.
You are familiar with it.
I think I know what you're talking about. And it was something that is disturbing and kind of worrisome. I don't know. It's an ambiguous ending. You don't know what's going to happen. You don't know. I'm sorry. I can't sit through 2 hours of this movie and imagine that there's going to be a ribbon at the end of it. I don't see things happening. I don't see things going well for this kid or the world at large. The world doesn't turn itself around after this. I like the fact that it's an ambiguous even setting where you don't know if this is a world war. You don't know if this is climate change. You don't know what the fuck is going on. It makes it a little bit more pressing, and I I'm living in Phoenix right now, as many of you who listen to this episode, listen to this show know. Moved back here after 20 years in Los Angeles, and here it is, the end of February, and we're hitting 90 degrees. It was 90 degrees 3 times last week, I think. At the end of February. That's unprecedented. That's not. And for those assholes who say, "Oh, it feels good to be able to go out in tank tops and shorts," you fucking moron. Have you no idea what this means? I don't see. There's a part of me that just questions my own intelligence in moving back to a place and getting a house in a place that has no water supply. I mean, I don't. We're 3 or 4 weeks out of the Palisades fires. If you were watching that on TV, my God, so much of it looked like what was on this screen.
That's one of those fires.
Yeah, one of the 12 fires that was going on in California at the time. People being unable to breathe, people being overwhelmed by, but just, I don't know. When you're younger, there's a kind of, there's an anger that exists in a great many of us. And it's in some ways a motivator. But a lot of times it's very it's kind of like at face value where it's easy to be angry at something when you have a safety net to fall back on, when you know things are going to be okay, when you know that you're going to still be comfortable and you're going to come back to a bed and food in your refrigerator, refrigeration to keep you from boiling up. But I'm looking at the world and I'm seeing a place where deserts are becoming more prevalent. Glaciers are melting. Animals are dying, and people are migrating. And you can't help but imagine that we are not paying attention to the physical, to the natural warning signs. And a movie like this, maybe I'm overreacting, but a movie like this puts it front and center and forces the hand and makes you realize we're neither prepared nor are we capable of surviving a cataclysmic event. This movie made me sad. It made me sad for the potential of the species and the idea of what we're even here for. And yet, for all of the negativity that I have walking out of this movie, turning the TV off, taking the dog for a walk, going out into the sunshine, I can't help but imagine that we're 25, 20, 15, 10 years away from something like this. Maybe less. I don't know. I just know that it's depressing, and it's if you're not paying attention, whose fault is it when everything goes to shit? So that's one aspect of it. The other aspect of it is the father-son wife relationship, that sense of family and how fragile it is, and how what love actually means. This story of a father and a son. What part of me asks, how much different would the film have been if it had been a father and a daughter? That's a different dynamic there. There's a lot of different ways of looking at this film and moving the pieces around to understand how it would, how effective it would be. But at the end of the day, ultimately, I don't see, if there's supposed to be any hope in this film, it's buried really fucking deep. I just don't, and yet it's one of the great films of the 21st century. I think from the way it looks, the pace, the minimal dialogue and writing, and the performances of both Charlize Theron and Viggo Mortensen, I think it's an incredible achievement. But the fact that it is so honest and bleak and dark and hopeless makes it something that very few people are going to see, are going to talk about, or even going to want to face. And I think that's to our detriment, because there's a hell of a lot going on in this film, and we could learn a hell of a lot if we were willing to pay attention to it. That's my take. I don't really know what else I can say about this film. I mean,
Well, what are some of those lessons?
The lessons?
Yeah, you're saying that we could learn all this.
I think there's an understanding that there needs to be a level of sacrifice in all of our lives in order to continue our existence. I've talked a lot about George Carlin in the past, and the idea that the earth is dying, and Carlin would mock that idea as very self-centered and narrow-minded. The earth isn't in danger. There is no, the earth has gone through numerous cataclysmic, apocalyptic events. Ice ages, earthquakes, volcanoes. He talks about the magnetic reversal of the poles, asteroids, meteors, the extinction of the dinosaurs. But the earth always comes back. The earth survives. We don't. And if we don't start paying attention to, I hate to sound like some bleeding heart, but there is truth to the recognition and the understanding that if the planet is unlivable, if we're making it unlivable, the only thing that we're hurting is ourselves. We're making it unlivable for us.
I mean, and the other animals that require those environments, yeah.
Yes, absolutely. But animals will come back. Maybe not those animals.
Not necessarily.
Not those animals. Something will come back. The point that I'm making is we are destroying it for ourselves. If you want to be completely selfish about it, you know how they say when you're on a plane, if you put on your mask and then you put on your child's mask, because you have to gain control of your own situation before you can help anybody else.
Right.
We need to recognize what we're doing. And then act in accordance to preserve the life of the species, of us. If we were able to do that, a lot of the other things would fall into place. Not everything. Granted, there'd still be problems. But at least there would be a more livable environment that we could Americans have this selfish kind of me attitude where we don't recognize how fortunate we are. And until society breaks down to the point where we have to be digging through landfills and traveling back roads and avoiding tribal gangs, warlords, we won't survive. I mean, like maybe I'm dramatic, maybe I'm exaggerating the possibilities, but I truthfully, I don't look at this film as some kind of post-apocalyptic fiction. I see this as a reality that is facing us in the coming century. I don't think the environment and the species can sustain itself. And when you watch a movie like The Road, you see how that plays out. If shit goes down, we will have no one to blame but ourselves. And we will have heard and listened to the stories imagined and predicted that have warned us against it. But we will have nobody to blame but ourselves.
Well, climate change is a hoax,
And that's part of the problem.
That's part of the problem.
That is the problem. That is a main problem. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's like I sit on the board of a fucking oil company, but I'm in this position in government. Climate change is the hoax. I need you to believe that.
Yeah. Last week we talked about, 2 weeks ago when this drops, we talked about Idiocracy, and that was a humorous take on this, and we laughed. But that, in a weird way, both of these two films are as bleak as one another. Both of these two films are as hopeless, and it's the lack of forethought and the inability of human beings to look past their own selfish needs. And I include myself in that. I'm a single man living in a 2-bedroom house in Phoenix. I mean, do I need all this? Probably not. I know the house that I'm living in. It's made of glass, and I'm throwing fucking stones all the time. There's a recognition of that. There's an acknowledgement. I don't know how. The longer I live, the more hopeless it seems. The more hopeless it seems, the less likely we are to change our ways. We're just going to run it till the wheels fall off. We're going to turn this fucking planet in like a rented car. Don't give a shit one way or another. And it's somebody else's problem to deal with. But then you see a movie and you see who this affects. You see the people. You see your grandchildren, your children, your grandchildren, your great-grandchildren, if we get to that place. And if you have any level of humanity in you, you can't help but worry for the future. The billionaires of this world, the Bezos, the Zuckerbergs, the Donald Trumps, the Putins, all these other money-hungry, power-hungry scumbags don't give a shit one way or another.
Yeah, at best they're like, well, we're gonna go to fucking Mars and leave the planet to die.
Yeah.
Or, leave the people to die on it. Of course. I mean, in these kind of situations, the only ones who are really actively working to prepare for this are basically the doomsday preppers.
Yeah.
You've seen 10 Cloverfield Lane, right?
Yes.
The John Goodmans of that film.
It's a great film. I love that film.
It's at some point we'll talk about it because it's an insane film. In this kind of, it's not as good as a Jordan Peele film, but there's something Jordan Peele about it in that it's you look at this guy and you're like, this guy's fucking crazy. And yes, he is. But he's also not wrong.
That's the scariest part.
In that specific, in the specific way that I'm not going to go into because,
yeah.
I mean, you can imagine, film people can put two and two together. You've probably already seen it. If not,
it comes as a surprise. It comes as a fucking major surprise.
Yeah. Yeah. It's also, while all this is happening, it's kind of like related to that and related to back to this is that it's like when resources are scarce, it's not like, oh, we're going to gather whatever people like together that we can find and say, hey, we're going to rebuild a society. It becomes, again, man against man. It's every man for himself type of shit. If people are like, well, who the fuck are you? At the end, he meets the boy meets the family. And my first question was, and I'd seen this before, but my first question is like, well, if I'm that man and I have 2 kids, a wife, and a dog, first of all, it's like, how the fuck did you manage to survive this long, all 4 of you, plus the dog? Like, that people, like, that you have a dog that somehow survived means potentially other dogs and other animals somehow survived. How? But also, how is it that you've been undetected when you have a dog? Because I feel like even in the film, like before I saw the dog, I feel like I could hear the dog barking. I don't know if that's true or not. And it's also like, it's this whole other world happening off screen in the family where it's just kind of like, what were they like? No, we're not fucking taking the boy. We're not fucking adding another mouth to feed. Versus like we need to do the right thing, like etc. Then if you're that dad and you approach the boy because you want him to come with you, how do you do that? How do you approach the boy in a way that isn't like what happened in the movie, which was not very convincing to me? That like, it was just very. For example, I've I've uh, done things where it's like I know that if I'm on an elevator with a female, um, I'm very aware that like sometimes, and it's like night, I'm coming out of work or something like that. It's like I'm aware that it can be awkward because it's like no one trusts anyone as they shouldn't, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and like I've been aware if it's like if I'm on an elevator with someone with some strange dude, then my shit is like, well, I want to project that don't fuck with me. If I'm so-called the strange dude on the elevator with some female, and it's like I want to project I'm not going to fuck with you. You know what I mean? Like, there's just kind of like an awareness.
I used to do it all the time. If I was walking in my neighborhood,
right,
and I saw a woman walking towards me, I would cross the street. I'd solve a problem before it becomes a problem. It's more difficult in an elevator, but
right.
I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah, in the elevator, you can look at your phone. You can fucking not look at your phone. You know what I mean? Like, it's just kind of like there's a sense of a courtesy. And so when the dad approaches, he has his gun, and the little boy's like pointing his gun at him. But at one point, he's just like, "Yeah, I want you to come with us." You don't see them like you can't tell if they're like in the distance where the boy can see them, because all you can see is that it's just the boy and the man. And at one point, the man is like, "Oh, you're kind of like whacked out, aren't you, kid?" And it's kind of like, "Aren't you fucking all whacked out? Like what? How have you managed to not stay whacked out? How have you managed to survive?" Um, and at the same time, it's like, well, if you were following, like, were you just waiting for the dad to die, and then now you're gonna like, is that how you survived? Is that you fucking like, you're gonna fucking eat this kid? You know what I mean?
Or sell them, trade them for something. I don't know. It just doesn't seem. It seems too bleak for me. I mean, I can't sit through 2 hours of this shit and then all of a sudden the sun comes out and it's tomorrow. You know, it doesn't work for me.
The sun will come out tomorrow,
Mm-hmm.
man.
Yeah.
It's a hard knock life, you know. It's well, there was. I also looked at the other boy, because this kid just craves like others, and he's like, "Do you have a boy? Um, is he my age?" And then they show the family, and the other boy does not look happy. I don't know if you saw that.
Yeah, I know that.
Um, so that is the only thing that gives me hope that actually like they're actually going to adopt this kid, because the other kid's like, fuck this kid, fuck this new guy, you know? Like, that's the only thing that seemed normal about that interaction. Whereas I think if it would have been like, we're going to get this kid and eat them, so you guys need to act normal. I don't.
Yeah,
I mean, I'm
nervousness there. They'd be trying to. Yeah, that's what you're saying.
Or, you know what I mean? Or else they would be like, they'd be happy, you know, because they're like, he's kind of skinny, but like, he's kind of tall. You know what I mean? It's like, and I'm reading way fucking too much more into that aspect, but I'm just kind of like, there's a whole other film there.
Yeah.
And yeah, you want to know, like, were there 3 kids before? You know what I mean? Like you want to feel like you imagine that they must have already lost something, but how did they maintain this? And at what point does society start to build itself again? Because it there will be forms that will start. Obviously, they're going to start as like bands of like criminals.
Yeah, it'll be imperious. It'll be
Yeah, exactly.
What's his name? Joe. Yeah, it's going to be that.
Donald Trump. Yeah. Yeah, it'll start. And Robert Duvall, this old man that by dumb luck has just made it. Like he's just managed.
Yeah.
Everyone has to protect their feet, their shoes. You just encounter people here and there. That couple, that fucking, there's a man shoots fucking Viggo Mortensen with an arrow, gets it with a flare. And the paranoia of like, why the fuck are you following us? Well, you're following us.
As I watch this film,
it's dark.
Yeah,
it's dark as fuck.
Yeah.
The reason I said groomer is because Cormac McCarthy has a style, Blood Meridian, like amazing fucking novel. Beautiful, violent, fucking graphic, fucked up, beautiful novel.
I still only got about 50% of it. I got to read it again, and it took me about 5 times trying to read it until I finally got through it all. And I'm still going to have to read it again to understand it fully. I really don't understand the novel. You know, when you're reading something and you're like, I don't know what's happening. There were moments in that book where it was like, I got an idea, but I don't know what's happening. I read that one. I read Child of God. I got a bunch of his stuff. I got The Orchard Keeper. I got All the Pretty Horses. I got The Road.
The Blood Meridian, I think it's try reading that one out loud.
That's gonna give me some funny looks in the employee lounge, but what else am I doing with my time?
Move your mouth. At least move your mouth when you read it. Because it has and he has an older quality and an ancient like quality. So I really, because I did that with passages of it because I wanted to hear it because I wanted to say it.
That might be the thing. That might be the saving thing of it. Yeah, because I did remember it being beautifully written. Yeah. The words are like rhythmic. They're just, there's a magic to the way they play. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but there, I think it was late last year, maybe that Vanity Fair came out with this article about how Cormac McCarthy, when he was in his 40s, began this fucked up, like problematic, however you want to describe it, relationship. With quotes, however you want to describe that, with a 16-year-old girl.
Ooh, okay, this is new.
And supposedly he took her to Mexico, and like he was sleeping with her. And there was all this backlash to the article because the article was written in a very over-the-top kind of flowery way that critics said mimicked, that was trying to approach Cormac McCarthy's writing, but obviously like wasn't getting there. plus it was very it was a romanticized look at that behavior. Now complicate that by the fact that the I don't remember the woman's name, but she based on what I remember, she seemed also to have kind of like mixed feelings about it because she remained in contact with him until his death. And so people have come out and said, oh, well, you were fucking groomed, basically. And he's a fucking, fill in the blank or one of those terms you want to use. And so it's very tinged, it's very stained by what happened. That whole relationship, however whatever side you take on it, and it's also because like people are there's her side of it, there was his side of it, there's the guy who wrote the Vanity Fair article's interpretation of all of that. There are people who are like, well, what does she say? I mean, that what she says is what it is. And then there are people that are like, yeah, but she's the one that got fucking groomed. Like, I'm sorry, but like, from the outside world, I'm gonna tell you what happened to you, you know?
Which is usually the way, yeah.
But I mean, and it's just more on some level like exploitation, even of the story itself. Apparently, like she inspired a lot of different characters and a lot of different aspects of his work. So the article described her as like a muse. And whereas people are like, that's not a fucking, that was like your victim, that wasn't your fucking muse. And so the reason I bring it up is because I think we should talk about it. But also, we should bring it up, I say, but also it's like, even in, and apparently this, like, she was in and out of like foster homes and all that. Like, what I'm getting at is that even in a world outside of the post-cataclysmic, obviously there's the exploitation, but that built out of the soil that created this story itself. We're now talking about the adaptation of it. Out of that soil, or in the soil out of which the story emerged, is already like something that could potentially have been like, I guess, beautiful, if that's how like the Vanity Fair guy wants to describe it, or love affair, or however. I think he does describe it that way. But in there is already built in like some level of exploitation, and some level of kind of like, who do you fucking like? Who can you trust in this world? You know?
Yeah.
And like, did he? I don't remember directly because I think at this point now, if you try to read that fucking article, I think it's locked. You have to be a member. Do your magic, internet. Did he approach her like the way that the man approaches the boy at the end? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Did he encourage her to find the good guys? You know? I mean, it's, who the fuck knows? But it's all dark as fuck. It's all dark as fuck. Carry that light, carry that fire. and try to find the good guys if they exist.
I'll say this much: if you're not prepared, if you're not prepared for that kind of storytelling, if you're not prepared for that kind of bleakness and hopelessness, avoid this film. It's not for you. It's not going to be something. There's nothing heartwarming about it. There's nothing positive. It's not uplifting in any way. It's not hopeful. But if you find hope in art, and you can appreciate a beautiful story beautifully realized and interpreted, with performances that really bring everything to life, that give it a different experience from sitting down and absorbing the words off of the page. There is a magic to that. I feel, as bleak as I have been about this film, and as it may sound as if I'm being dismissive of this film, no, this is one of the great works. I believe that this is a film that that doesn't shy away from its material, that isn't afraid to attack it in a way that that leaves you at least hopeful for the artistic angle of it. And even with the ending, I'm not so quick to believe that it's a happy ending. It's ambiguous. And with ambiguity, you're left to wonder, what the hell am I watching? The natural instinct for most people is to try to find the hope. But if you've watched it up until this point, you know that hope is it's a rare commodity in this world. And there may be something good to come out of it, as far as the storyline is concerned. But more likely, it's more of the same. And it's more of the same as just bleak. I don't know. The ending is, just talking about the ending gives it, our discussion of the ending gives it a little bit more power to me than my initial viewing of it. The way those kids look from your description, the way Guy Pearce plays it, Molly Parker's performance, I don't know what to think. And not knowing is in keeping with the basic narrative that you're watching. I think it's a tremendous achievement. And like I said, I don't know if I can recommend it, because I don't know who I would recommend it to. But if you truly love cinema and you truly love storytelling, you owe it to yourself to watch this movie. The rewards are, they're not immediately recognizable, but if you allow it to sit with you for a while, it begins to overwhelm. And I don't think you would regret watching this movie, investing the 2 hours to experience this world, to take heed of the warning. And I think it's important. That's my final thought on this.
This episode is for Stephen Palmer. member. Thank you for your dedication and your continued support. Buy me a coffee.com/watchthis with RickRamos. That's buymeacoffee.com/watchthis with RickRamos. Next week we'll be back with another fucked up
Yeah.
fucked up, pessimistic, brutal film to watch while we watch everything go to shit outside. Stay tuned. Stay depressed. Goodbye.